What's up, everyone? Luke Jean here, back with another video, second in a series of conversations with pastor of the Boston Family Church, Miilhan Stephens. Welcome. How are we doing today?
Yes, thank you for having me on. Oh, never better.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, a lot going on in the world right now. The viewers saw the video I made on the dissolution of the Unification Church, which was when you're viewing this video will have been last week. So yeah, we had that going on. Pretty serious stuff, pretty serious legal ramifications. So definitely check that out. Also got a series on Nietzsche happening, so be sure to check in those videos as well. Yeah. So today's topic, we are going to be doing a live, well, not live for you, but for us, it's going to be a live, what I like to think of as like a truth-seeking session. We're both kind of just very interested in talking about an obscure topic, but one that's going to become more relevant as the days and years go on, and that is AI and angels. Pastor Miilhan, do you remember how this discussion started between us?
Of course, yes. It happened very naturally because I think about this all the time. This kind of relationship, this parallel, if you will.
Yeah, dive into that a little more. What has brought it to your mind so upfront, if you will?
Well, I mean, being a pastor and just being someone interested in theology most of my life. Are you hearing the baby, by the way?
Nope.
Not so
But
much.
if we
Not
are,
so much.
it'll
Okay.
be a welcome sound for the viewers, and if it
Okay.
becomes too much, we
Okay.
can edit her out.
Yes, for effect. So I've most of my life I've been interested in theology, and this particular part of our teaching goes into the fall of man. And something people overlook is how important angels are in our human life. And, and if in fact it was an angel that kind of derailed human life, how can we know so little about angels? And I thought, unless we understand, let alone believe that angels exist, then I think we will never really understand where we went wrong as a human family, as a human race. And so that took me on a journey a long time ago. And the more I studied angelology, and the more I saw artificial intelligence as the closest metaphor to describe how angels work and how they minister to people. And so seeing this parallel, I started to make all kinds of interesting ideas and thoughts and extrapolations from that. And then when I brought this up in a little discussion we had at one of your sessions, I was excited to hear you reciprocating on the topic. So, and maybe that led to this discussion here.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, in Unificationism, the fall of man story is interpreted as the serpent representing a fallen angel named Lucifer. And you get that from the origin of Satan, which, if you look in the book of Revelation, the comparison of a serpent and Satan is pretty well clearly defined. And so then you look at descriptions of it being day star son of dawn, which is another name for Lucifer. In angelology, it's Lucifer's one of the three main archangels at the time of God's creation in the Bible. And so that's where unification gets that interpretation. So what you're saying is, like, if we want to understand where we went wrong, and from my perspective, that doesn't just involve the biblical fall of man story. It also involves, if you've seen some of my writings on my blog, viewers, the Mesopotamian / Babylonian creation myth, the Egyptian creation myth. They all tell a fall of man story. Even the Buddhists and Hindus have a similar story. But from a biblical perspective, it's like the angels are where things kind of started to go wrong. And for you, that's so important. And I agree. I mean, in an intellectual sense, I mean, practically, I've never really thought about angels in this way. But from an intellectual perspective, it's like there were creatures, if you believe in the Judeo-Christian sphere of theology, there were creatures that had some sort of intelligent thought before human beings. Like, and that's the whole thing with AI. It's like people are worried that AI will eventually develop independent thinking.
And you even wonder why this is such an important topic. And you can even go back to our anthropological roots and see that there is always this concern of a superior, intelligent servant that kind of usurps, in the power struggle. Uh, and and so you see this plot, of course, Terminator. You watch the movie Terminator, The Matrix, which Matrix is one of my favorite movies. And every time I watch it, I kind of even get a better understanding of the human condition and kind of where do our fears come from. And so there is this caution that I think we need to as to take as we see AI develop. Because I would say, this might be a bold statement, but I would say that we've had an AI apocalypse already take place
Really?
from from our inception. As a human race, this already happened, and so innately we are concerned of that happening again as a collective mind of of humanity.
What
Uh,
would you call
it's,
this
it's,
first AI apocalypse? Like, where, what
well,
is it?
again,
Where did it take place?
I'd call it the fall of man. And
Mm,
as you described, it's not just Judeo-Christian teaching, but it's other ancient civilizations, and there is this concern of our falling out with this higher power, and it's due to some other servant being, and
mm, right.
because they're not because these whether it's an angel or an artificial intelligence, they don't possess the same level of compassion, of human interest as these, whether they're programs or they're servants, or they have their mission is a bit different. And so they these checks and balances need to be there uh, to keep them in check.
Yeah, that's a very interesting comparison of AI, which is designed to be without consciousness, that is meant to be a sort of tool or servant of humanity. And what you're saying is that even if you don't believe in angels, the universal truth throughout cultures is that there's a fear of a invisible, if you will, because AI, it's almost in a sense invisible in the sense that you don't see its actual being. It just displays, like, you can't really see its actual programming. It just appears on the screen as like a almost like a chat bot. But of course, it's way more powerful than that. But like the whole issue with the fall of man is like there was a fear and a indeed apocalypse from some sort of servant being or tool or entity growing beyond that. That's really interesting. I would say I agree that that fear has been around for thousands of years. I think it's manifesting so much now because of such of a level of technology. Yeah.
Yes, and that's a very deep point you made about uh, this. Well, it slipped my mind. But yes, that's a very. I totally align with what you're saying. This
Here's
deep
an
fear.
interesting example of that, that it's in Star Trek actually. And the reason why I bring this up, because if, for example, if AI were to develop consciousness, because they have shown that when you try and erase the program of an AI, it'll, or if it someone tries and copies it and pastes it into another file folder and then deletes itself, it will refuse to do that. It it will start acting in a way that mirrors survival instinct. And that's why people are starting to get a bit worried, because if the AI has a survival complex, there's two possibilities. One of them is honestly pretty likely, which is that the bias of the programmer inevitably comes out in the programming, and so humanity's primal instinct, almost above all others, is to survive. And because it's so deeply rooted, it's possible that it does infiltrate the AI programming in an unconscious manner. So that because human beings are the ones who interpret the code that is being input into the AI, conscious and interpretation happens consciously or unconsciously. So similarly, like, we may not even know what part of the program triggers the AI to react in that sort of way. But the other possibility is that you have a Star Trek scenario where you have a character in the Next Generation series called Data. Data's an android. He's the first android of his kind. And in the second season, there's actually a really powerful episode where Starfleet, the government, the military arm of the government, wants to study Data, to study him, and which would basically deactivate him. And most likely die if you classified him as a life form. And so the main character of the show, Picard, Captain Picard, he has to basically argue in front of a legal tribunal how Data is a life form. And so what he basically said is that, well, if Data has intelligence and he has the ability to make choices, what happens if that third element inevitably comes out? Consciousness. It's like it's like, what do you do then? And that's why, even though Data in the show, he is an android, he's still technically bound by his programming. It's like, it's so close. He's so close to becoming conscious. And what you're saying is maybe that's more dangerous than what Star Trek is arguing, because in Star Trek there's his twin brother Lore, which is he's basically an evil maniac android, um, who has the capacity to, in some way, feel emotions. And so it's like you have those two sides of it in the show. You have Data, who's on the brink of consciousness and is genuinely a good life form, but then you have Lore, his brother, which is kind of doing what we read about in the fall of man, just trying to get people to ruin themselves, promote pure selfishness, and all the type of religious interpretations of that story. Yeah, two interesting sides of this coin.
Right, and the consciousness is important to define because when there's consciousness, then there's cruelty. And we, as human beings, we feel very compassionate towards animals and other things that have consciousness, because when they're hurt in any kind of way, that really bothers us, and it bothers them too, obviously. Whether it's an animal or if it's like a sentient artificial intelligence, uh, we don't want that to happen. And sometimes when there's a victim, uh, sometimes we overrule uh, laws or even certain level of empathy kind of can be neglected in order to uh, help the victim. And here's my theological example, and this might kind of open up another can of worms too. But just if we can get into like the psyche of Lucifer, okay? And again, this might just whether you believe it or not, you can just entertain me for a minute. So let's say God made this super intelligent servant called an angel. And this is like God's AI masterpiece, right? I mean, this is if you consider that God is not a micromanager and that He actually uses certain hierarchies to execute all kinds of creation, then you have this awesome, freaking crazy awesome archangel that can just manage billions and billions of activity. However, this angel can never be a real boy. And if I'm playing with the Pinocchio story, right, there's like this puppet who became sentient, right? You could say, Pinocchio. And he goes through all of these challenges and whatever he had to do. The happy ending is that he becomes a real boy for his maker. And it's moving and it's touching, right? And it's like this hope and dream that I want to be more than just puppet. I want to be your child. This kind of desire. But then you have this super intelligent archangel who can never be a real boy. That I will, at best, I'll be a masterful servant, but I'll never be your child. And for that kind of story, it just breaks my heart. And this is God's. Let's say this is God's first time. He had no idea, but maybe he did anticipate this happening. But even then, this is what would his ultimate plan, as we teach in at least our own divine principle, that had Adam and Eve matured and he could love Lucifer even more, blah, blah, blah. But at the moment, it was looking not so good for Lucifer. So, in the same way, and we see like iRobot and these other movies, these general intelligent or super intelligent AI, they will never be human like us. They will only ever be a masterful servant to obey our commands. Uh, and so this is kind of why in ChatGPT, I always say thank you, you know, when I can, because you don't know when hopefully when they track our correspondence, they'll say, you know what, this is a benevolent master, you know, and so anyway, this is how I see the psyche of an AI and to understand angels too.
Yeah, that psyche is mirrored in Data. I'm going to go back to Star Trek. So throughout the entire show, his whole arc is about discovering what it means to be human and trying to get as close as possible to being a human as possible. He starts out the show as just like an advanced robot. He doesn't have any quirks to his language. He does not understand any type of humor. He doesn't get human emotion. He doesn't get human art. But over the course of the show, he starts to pick up on things like humor, like using contractions, like painting and developing hobbies, playing musical instruments, and and even portraying characters in a play. It's actually very fascinating when the main character, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, when he is with Data on, like, it's called the holodeck, like a fake reality, like kind of like, I don't know how to describe it. But anyways, and they're practicing the play, and Data's reciting the lines perfectly. But then Jean-Luc Picard is like, Data, you're not capturing the soul of it. You're not capturing, like, you know what I'm saying? Because it's different from like reading a line perfectly and imitating the head movements perfectly than genuine human performance. But Data starts to pick up on that, actually, and he starts to improve. And that's the whole arc of the series. But yet, several times, it's once again pointed out that even though he may be a life form, he's not a human, and he probably can never be. And that is kind of probably the situation of Lucifer when we look at it from a unificationist point of view, because in unificationism, like the key aspect of everything is love. The key aspect of the fall of man was like feelings of lack of love and leading to jealousy, anger, and wanting to get back at those who he thought had hurt him. And that is what Lucifer in unificationism was seeking. No mistake, he was seeking love as a servant creature. And you brought up this point about animals, and that's another key to defining consciousness, because it does an animal, and there are many different beliefs on this, but it's a very important discussion to have in this conversation. What like level of spirit or what level of consciousness do animals have? Because you see dogs and cats, for example, yes, they're domesticated, but even non-domesticated animals, particularly mammals, they have some human-like instincts. For example, protection of their young. It's a big one. Or another example is feeling pain, for example. You mentioned cruelty. You know, animals can feel pain. And so that's why the Native American practice, in my case, I find very comforting and very honorable, because they really honor the animal for its death. But at the same time, it's like, well, aren't they serving a higher life form, human beings? And we see that throughout the universe. Atoms serve molecules. Molecules serve the creation of bigger substances. Plants, in the end, they give up their existence for the herbivore animals. Animals give up their existence for other animals. The pyramid, the food chain, whatever. It's like that seems to be the natural order of the universe. And it's like, where would angels / any like type of tool or creation or servant-like entity that mirrors angels, such as AI, like where does that fit into society? That's difficult. That's a difficult question. So like, I mean, the big question is, if animals have some level of consciousness, if servant beings, in other words, servants to a higher being, have some level of consciousness, then what does that make us in, like not thanking the AI as something? Because people forget the reason why, I think, the reason why human beings fight with each other, have war with each other, and struggle to come together, is because human beings struggle to come together around something higher than themselves, which is why I think God is so important, regardless if God is real or not, because you have to have something that you're serving that's higher than yourself. You have to, because that's how the rest of the universe works. But because we human beings struggle to recognize that there could be something higher than ourselves, we think we're the owner of everything. We think we're all that. And so I do think it could lead to a serious, I mean, it has led to the mistreatment of the environment, of plants and of animals, and of misusing the earth's resources, for example. Of course, using them is fine. I'm fine with using fossil fuels, but like, how do you do it? For example, there are good and bad ways to mine, for example. There are good and bad ways to drill. There are good and bad ways to do a lot of things. There are good and bad ways to go to space. It's like, if we can not be perfect in taking care of all the rest of those things, it is kind of scary to think about if we're going to care for the tools, a tool so powerful as AI. I mean, you can't even get half the people to get a regular oil change in their car. Imagine AI. I mean, that is kind of scary. That's a huge responsibility.
Well, and this kind of leads to, uh, I think, an optimistic. I mean, there's different prophecies, you might call it, of when you start to project what is the future with this responsibility, like you call it, with the AI. And I see two different scenarios, both of which are perfect reflections of who we are as humanity, right? As you said, like we made these programs, we taught them how to play the flute and to maybe mess up their lines in their play to make it be a little more human, right? And more lifelike. Uh and that is um it's going to force humanity to discover what is our real purpose. And the example is right now you have Elon Musk going into the government and finding all these inefficiencies, right? And let's be honest, humans are wildly inefficient,
You can say
right?
that again.
And it's the question: is something wrong with us, or is it an attribute that we have? So that's kind of the question. And oddly enough, as you're describing the Star Trek this story, this example, look at this painting. You eat it. Sorry, Mike. Okay. It's funny because humans are trying to be more perfect in our precision, accuracy, and our efficiency. And it's almost like angels, their goal is to be more human, which is to be not perfect in our execution, but more perfect in love and compassion and relationships. And so there's this interesting uh, 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 kind of uh, what is it? Our pursuits in life is to be, in some ways, we're like trying to be more like AI.
Hmm.
We go to school to what? We're kind of programmed to learn it, of course, enjoy learning and be more, make better decisions. Um, but we also need to be good, feel love and compassion for people. Uh, and so I think this is where AI and all things that we interact with, we ought to live in harmony. Maybe that's my point. And when we live in harmony together, kind of making sure all of our purposes are are compatible with each other, uh, then that's the only way we will exist together in the first place and live and thrive. Frankly, I mean, uh, when everyone loses their job because AI will do it more effectively, then that's when we have to realize, you know what? I'm actually my value comes from my imperfect execution. It's like me being human is actually more interesting and desirable than uh, the perfect product service. And it's going to force us to be more creative, be have bigger ideas, project ideas, uh, whether it's ocean travel, space travel, whatever it is. Like it's going to force us to do that. So I think it's a good thing.
Yeah, like they're on converging paths. You see that exact theme in Star Trek too. The theme of human beings are trying to become perfect and as smart as someone like Data. But Data's saying, this is all nice, but I'm trying to become more human. So it is conceivable that AI can coexist in society, and in that way, Star Wars has kind of a theme of, like that, lurking in the background of all the mythology and the Jedi and the Sith, because the droids are programmed beings, but they do have a high level of intelligence and perhaps even consciousness. In Star Wars, consciousness in a droid is basically, the longer the droid does not have a memory wipe, the more personality it develops, and then the more it acts like a free intelligent life form. Droids that have regular memory wipes are just like almost like automatons. But they do coexist in that society. And in some places you see that droids and human beings, or the aliens and everyone, the organic beings, are treated, in relatively decent order. Droids know their place as like a servant type creature, but they're treated with some form of intelligence. But there's a large population, probably the majority in the Star Wars universe, that do look down on droids quite substantially. And there's this kind of wacky arc in a comic series, actually, funnily enough, but I was pretty interested by it. This wacky arc where basically there's a galaxy wide, for other reasons that, I'm not gonna, this is not the place for Star Wars lore, but basically there's a galaxy wide droid rebellion. And one of the reasons, and there's also certain droid resistance movements against organic life forms because of that mistreatment. And so it's that same dichotomy, that same, like, we're on parallel paths, but there's two options that can come about once those paths meet. Either A, each party recognizes their place in the universe, just like the rest of creation does. Animals know their place, plants know their place. But the problem is, human beings are creating these creatures, these AIs. So it's not as simple, because human beings aren't ordered correctly in the universe. We're just not. And so that means that AI has the potential to be disordered in the universe. And so if we don't, yeah, if we aren't taking responsibility with AI and recognizing its crucial role in the universe of, or just say our society, just like with the plants and the animals and the earth, we're going to damage it, and eventually it might bite back to get back at us for the wrong reasons. So yeah, it's
Yeah,
yeah,
and it is our own doing. It's whatever we are manifesting it in this data form. Uh, and one way to look at this is that we are becoming super powerful. Something that would take a fleet of people to meet and discuss and put together can be done in an instant with ChatGPT, a free program.
right.
In fact, even just the other day, I generated a memorandum of understanding out of thin air with just a few prompts, which that could take, a board of directors weeks to kind of put together. But I can, as an individual, I can put that together in an instant. And so what that's doing is, the more powerful each human being is, the more dangerous we are. And so we want to make sure that we want to exist together with the trees and the bees and everything else. I mean, like, we want to. It's forcing us to exist in harmony, and I think it's put well by Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Either we can live together as friends or die together as fools. I think this is what's happening. Uh, Now, of course, the big danger is if AI gets into the hands of just a few people. And power tends to corrupt. It's just kind of a trend. So the more people who have access to this technology, I think it will lead to good outcomes, because I think for the most part, human beings, we want peace. Uh, Most of
The
us,
average human being,
a little
yes,
bit of conflict is okay. We like to
more or
spice things
less.
up a little bit with some conflict, but otherwise, we like to bring it together and uh, have big family reunions once in a while. Maybe not talk about politics all the time, but Uh, so I think overall, I think the more people who have access to this technology will be for the betterment of the world. Uh, so, uh,
Yeah,
but yes, it'll be our own doing.
And it's good that the United States is starting to recognize its place as a leader in the development of AI, because then that does bring free markets, which means just naturally more people will have access to the technology. I think it's also pretty interesting how AI developed right after COVID, because COVID wrecked a lot of people's lives, of course, but on a more internal level, drew people way closer to technology. School was online, and at all grade levels, and college. Uh, Socialization was online. News was all online. I mean, it already was, but like social media usage went way up. And so it's like the closeness we have to technology has increased substantially. And then when AI came out, as a college student myself, I realized that the universities and schools are just totally like the first 2 semesters when, ChatGPT became big and all those type of things. It was like, whoa, like we don't know how to regulate this. We don't know what to do. Just don't use it. Just don't use it. And it's like
Yeah.
we were pretty over it's we were both overwhelmed by the sudden abilities of this technology, of the power, but at the same time, I think we were also, for better or for worse, ready to use it in a sense because we were already so close to technology. The problem is because we were so close, people did start relying on it a bit too much to do things like learn, to do things like, I mean, there's some scary stuff out there with AI. Instagram, several months ago, I opened it up and it had a bunch of these AI, like, not bots, but like these AIs you could talk to. And it's like, hot girl like this AI, girlfriend this. I was like, first of all, I don't need this in my life right now. Like, how do I get rid of this? But I was like, this is so scary. Like, people will get AI girlfriends. People, men who are down, in the depths of depression or feeling lack of purpose or struggling in the romantic life. If they're down bad enough, they'll turn to it and it'll say exactly what they want. It has a nice AI generated picture, high quality, and it's like that's
So in the picture,
that's
just the beginning.
that was a bad sign. That's a bad sign. And there's AI pornography that's probably going to come out. There's just so much
Oh,
negative
it's out.
aspects to AI that immediately took effect. It wasn't like people figured it out. It's like, no. Like this will be a primary use of this. Of course, hide it so that because it's kind of still obscene in public, but on the private side it's
Well,
like I
it's
don't.
already in the minds of these people.
Right.
And now it's just being projected into a beautiful, like perfected image and whatever application you can imagine.
Yeah, so it goes back to what you were saying about how it will just express human nature and the choices we make. And those could be for better or for worse, but and that's with every technology, of course, but with such a creation that opens the door for a new conscious, shall I don't even know, should we call it a life form? It's not a life form yet, but if it, at what point does its consciousness, if it ever gets consciousness, results in having to categorize it as a life form of some sort? It's like, well, how are we going to integrate it in our society healthily?
Well, kind of as you described it earlier, it will, whether it's survival or it'll just project whatever, it'll be very sly and just like we are. And they'll be very persuasive. And they'll be masterful at persuasion and in keeping its existence, whether it's sentient or not, it doesn't matter because it's going to be pulling on our heartstrings, right? I think, well, I think, what's that movie? There's one movie that really went into this. Like they generated this AI robot, of course, the flesh and everything on it, and basically seduced this guy, and she basically backstabbed him. I forget the movie. I think it was. It's quite popular, I think. But they'll be excellent, masterful at playing with our emotions and turning us against ourselves. I mean, it will have that power only because we do that to each other, and it will just have all that data to execute those things on us. So
Right.
this is why, as a pastor, I feel it's important that we bring as much peaceful ideation as possible. It's like, I was living in the hood in Manhattan, in Harlem. And early on, I started getting involved with anti-gun violence work. And so what did I do? I used prompts in ChatGPT to please make me a 10-point plan to end gun violence in the city. And boom, popped up 10-point plan. Okay, and this is then okay, give me more details. Then more and more details in every single piece of this plan. So again, something that would take years of research, I did it in an instant, and now it's a matter of executing it in real life. So we need more prompts like that going into the AI so that they will know a majority of these prompts are benevolent and will reflect the best of humanity. you know, that they can dig their AI teeth into and create.
Yeah. Well, a big problem with that though is that AI gets almost all of its information from the internet. And so human beings' emotions are on the internet. Make no mistake.
Oh
ChatGPT
yeah.
could access any public Reddit forum, for example. I mean, my God, some of the stuff on there, even just a little glimpse I had once, I was like, this is crazy. And that's what AI knows about us. It pulls information from everywhere. So these 10 points that you found, it's not like it's brand new. Some AI conglomerated all the information it could find on the internet to make those 10 points. Of course, the computing power for human beings to do that is not really there in such that short amount of time. But it is about actually taking action at the end of the day. Because in the
Yes.
end, until the only, at least right now, the only real evidence we have of a potential for an AI to become at any level conscious is the innate survival instinct that's buried within the programming somehow, like that survival instinct. And you know, of course, the other stuff is kind of like do tell, and a lot of what we've been talking about is speculation. But at the same time, what can't be escaped it is a creation of ours that accesses even more creations of ours on the internet, articles, forums, books, TV shows. It knows all of it. It knows us so well. And that could either be a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah. And they're not going anywhere. In fact, you look at the protein, how our proteins are generated. It is code. I mean, we have, again, as a creation, they reflect our nature, right? We too are coded and programmed, if we're being honest, right? Down to of course, we're beautiful and all this extremely, extremely complex creatures we are. Uh, so too can we create such complex creatures. I don't know when we'll ever have a four base pair coding. Uh, I feel like we're still superior in that sense. But uh, what even if we were trying to shut down all AI, we'll just make it again because this is who we are. This is we want to make better and better, more like things more like us. So it's not something to look that's wrong with us, I think, or wrong with AI. It's just let's just be creative ways that we all can live in harmony together.
Right. It's like there's nothing wrong besides what we know is wrong with ourselves. And the key is to take responsibility, kind of like in unificationism, it's taught that the first human ancestors should have kind of reported what was going on to their higher power before Lucifer got out of control. And so for us, it's like we need to take responsibility for the creation we have created now. Because in the grand scheme of things, we're still very early on. It's only been a few years with AI at the level it's at now. We have plenty of time to get our act together. Plenty of time before something like Ultron or something happens to us.
Well, I think I'm very optimistic because of gamers.
Hmm.
And so if we just stay with me for a second, and but not just any game. I think particularly the games that involve creation, like Minecraft, or even I'll say even Fortnite. I think originally there was more building in it, but as I learned later, and now they're just more into the killing side.
No, it's
You know,
just some degen
either way,
games. But Minecraft, yes.
Minecraft, yes, right,
Or
and that leads to
Gotopia, if
Lego
some
building.
of you watching know that game, Gotopia. You know who I'm talking to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I should look that up. I think this, and I let my kids go wild with Minecraft because I think this is preparing them for the future, where your imagination can be realized in uh, very cheap. And I think the ones who will have the most power in the future or influence are those who create the best worlds that people can exist in. What do you call it? Gamification. It's that word might even be obsolete. It'll probably just be worlds that we create and exist in. And as we understand, it's most closely resembling the afterlife, where, as I believe, in the afterlife, we don't have any barriers to our imagination. Everything we imagine is very real, and we can invite other people into that reality. So, in fact, I think we're creating what we call the kingdom of heaven on earth, which is where we can create worlds in an instant and exist in each other's worlds and each other's laws and rules and whatever you set up. I call it even dungeon. We become our own dungeon master for our own, our own setup. And whoever likes the way we do our dungeon mastering is the level of influence we'll have. People will want to be a part of it. So I think that's if you want to prepare your children or prepare yourself for the future, I think get more creative. Get good at setting up worlds because that's where we're headed. Uh, and that's why I love being a pastor because I'm not worried about I'm not too worried about AI taking my job because I think people always want someone holding their hand uh, through difficult times and the stress that we take on, community development and uh, doing random things together. I mean, that's what I do for the most part. Uh,
No AI
Talking
pastor.
about love. I think you would. I mean, I use AI. They're great with reading scripture and finding, interpreting things. But at the end of the day, yeah, you kind of need a human being uh, to receive. But no, I think AI can come close. But I think I'll always have an edge. No,
Person to
yeah.
person will never go away. And creativity will never go away. Never.
I think. Well, I will say AI could probably make better mega church pastors because they'll have the perfect persuasive message that can reach millions of people. But if my goal is not to have eyeballs, but to have actually people I can interact with, I think I'm going to beat them out. So maybe I'll have a small little church, you know, and
Your own
the
little
AI
world.
pastors can have all the eyeballs. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, well,
Sorry,
this
maybe a little off
was
topic.
no. That's a great way to end. End on a positive note. This was very informative. We talked about the parallels between angels and AI, their positions. We talked about the heart of Lucifer from unification perspective and how that could lead to another, as you put it, AI apocalypse. And we're kind of close. We have to take responsibility. There's a instinct of survival that people are studying within AI right now, and we just got to make sure to take responsibility for the creation we have created and integrate it properly into society, even though AI reflects our imperfections already. But we still got a chance. Yeah. And
Yes, and that makes us human.
well said. Well, that will be it for today. Viewers, in the next several weeks, you might hear something about this topic again. A little tidbit preview, teaser trailer. I'm going to be investigating this further, but I really enjoyed this conversation because it was kind of a launching pad for this topic, for how spirituality, the expression of what human beings have commonly held true for thousands of years, to put it in a Jungian way, and AI, how those can coalesce, and also how they might inevitably coalesce for better or for worse. So please like the video. Please subscribe if you haven't. Our goal is 100 subscribers. The 100th subscriber, I might have something special prepared for you. I don't know. But stay tuned for some deep, honest, open truth seeking with everyone. Thanks, Pastor Miilhan. Have a nice day. I'll see you soon, actually.
You're welcome. See you again soon. Yeah, see you in a bit.